In the turbulent courts of Tudor England, where the air hummed with the clash of armored ambitions and the whispers of silk-clad intrigue, Margaret Plantagenet entered the world on a sultry August day in 1473 at Farley Hungerford Castle near Bath, a fortress of grey stone that stood sentinel over rolling hills, its towers casting long shadows that seemed to foretell the betrayals awaiting her noble bloodline. Born into the waning days of the Wars of the Roses, Margaret was the daughter of George Plantagenet, Duke of Clarence, brother to Kings Edward IV and Richard III, her lineage a glittering chain linking her to the throne, yet fraught with the peril of proximity to power. As a child, she navigated a world where alliances shifted like autumn leaves in the wind. Her early years, a prelude to the darkness that would envelop her under Henry VIII's reign. Her unwavering loyalty, a beacon that would ultimately draw the storm clouds closer. From her cradle, Margaret's life was steeped in the grandeur and grief of royalty. Her father, George, ever the ambitious schemer, had married Isabel Neville, daughter of the mighty Earl of Warwick, known as the kingmaker for his role in crowning and uncrowning monarchs. The family resided in opulent halls filled with tapestries depicting heroic battles, but beneath the veneer lay a cauldron of familial discord. In 1478, when Margaret was just 5, her father was executed for treason against his brother Edward IV, a well-known historical fact that saw George allegedly drowned in a butt of Malmsey wine in the Tower of London, a macabre end that became legend, symbolizing the intoxicating dangers of disloyalty. As the news reached Farley, young Margaret's mind reeled with confusion, her thoughts a tangle of innocence lost. Why must Papa go away forever? Is this the price of being close to kings? Emotions welled within her, a deep sympathy evoking sorrow for the father she adored, critically mingled with the dawning realization that blood ties could bind or break. With George's death, Margaret and her brother Edward became wards of the crown, their fortunes plummeting into uncertainty. Her mother, Isabel, had died 2 years earlier in 1476, possibly from childbed fever or poison, leaving the siblings orphaned in a court that viewed them as potential threats. An obscure, unsettling detail lingers in the shadows of her youth. In portraits later commissioned, Margaret wore a bracelet adorned with a tiny golden barrel, a subtle emblem nodding to her father's infamous demise. A personal talisman that blended mourning with a quiet defiance, as if carrying the weight of that wine-soaked legend on her very wrist. In quieter moments, alone in the castle's drafty chambers, Margaret's thoughts drifted to this symbol, emotions stirring, a poignant mix of pride in her heritage and a shiver of foreboding, wondering if such emblems foretold her own entanglement in royal whims. As the Wars of the Roses raged on, Margaret witnessed the ascent of her uncle Richard III to the throne in 1483, only to see him fall at the Battle of Bosworth in 1485, his crown tumbling into a hawthorn bush as Henry Tudor claimed victory, ushering in a new dynasty. Now under the watchful eye of Henry VII, Margaret's life became one of cautious navigation. At 14, she was married to Sir Richard Pole, a loyal Tudor supporter and distant cousin, in a union arranged to neutralize her Plantagenet claims. Their home at Bisham Manor buzzed with the cries of their 5 children, Henry, Arthur, Ursula, Reginald, and Geoffrey, offering glimpses of domestic warmth amid the political chill. Yet Margaret's mind often wandered to her imprisoned brother Edward, the last male Plantagenet heir, his fate a constant ache. Will he ever be free, or am I destined to carry our line alone? Sympathy swells for the young woman, burdened by a bloodline that promised glory but delivered grief, while criticism falls on the era's ruthless calculus, where innocence was no shield. Henry VII's court, with its blend of suspicion and splendor, shaped Margaret's resilience. She learned to cloak her Yorkist sympathies in Tudor loyalty, serving as a lady-in-waiting to Catherine of Aragon during her brief marriage to Prince Arthur. Widowed in 1505 when Richard died, leaving her impoverished with young children. Margaret petitioned for aid, her thoughts fierce with determination. I must endure for them, turn shadows into strength. The critical eye notes how her noble status, once a crown, became a crown of thorns. Yet her deep sympathy lies in her unyielding spirit, forging ahead in a world that devoured the vulnerable. Did her noble blood truly curse her from the cradle, or was it the cruel hand of history, ever-shifting allegiances that cast the first stone toward her shadowed dawn? As the Tudor rose bloomed over England, Margaret's early life unfolded like a tapestry half-woven, threads of betrayal and loyalty intertwining, drawing her inexorably toward the darkness yet to come. In the opulent halls of Greenwich Palace, where the Thames River murmured secrets to the stone keys and tapestries of hunting scenes fluttered in the draught, Margaret Pole, now elevated to Countess of Salisbury by Henry VIII's decree in 1512, stepped into a world of glittering favor that masked the treacherous undercurrents of Tudor politics. Restored to her titles and estates after years of widowhood's penury, Margaret's life bloomed anew under the young king's benevolence, her Plantagenet blood, once a curse, now seemingly a bridge to royal grace. Yet, as she curtsied before the throne, the air hummed with whispers of alliances that bloomed like spring roses only to wither in autumn's chill, foreshadowing the storm of suspicion brewing in Henry VIII's restless mind, a monarch whose desires shifted like the winds off the English Channel. Margaret's ascent was marked by her appointment as governess to Princess Mary in 1516, a role that placed her at the heart of the royal nursery at Richmond Palace, where she oversaw the education of Henry's cherished daughter with a maternal firmness tempered by her own experiences of loss. Her thoughts often drifted to her brother Edward's grim fate, executed in 1499 by Henry VII to secure the Tudor line against pretenders, a well-known historical fact that had seen the young Earl of Warwick beheaded on Tower Hill, his death a calculated move to appease Spanish demands for Catherine of Aragon's marriage to Prince Arthur. Remember the golden barrel bracelet from her youth, that talisman of her father's Malmsey-drowned end. It now gleamed on her wrist during courtly audiences, a subtle reminder of past betrayals that fueled her cautious loyalty. Emotions swirling with gratitude for Henry's restoration, yet a critical wariness of kings who bestowed favors with one hand while wielding axes with the other. Sympathy deepens for Margaret, a woman rebuilding from ashes, her heart aching for stability in a court where smiles concealed daggers. The glittering world of Henry's early reign enveloped her, masks at Whitehall where courtiers danced in silken masks, feasts laden with roasted swans and spiced wines, and hunts in the forests of Windsor where the king's laughter echoed like thunder. Margaret's son, Reginald, sent abroad to study, corresponded with tales of scholarly pursuits, while her other children, Henry, Ursula, Geoffrey, found places in the royal orbit, alliances weaving her family into the Tudor tapestry. Yet beneath the splendor lurked foreshadowed peril. Henry's growing obsession with an heir strained his marriage to Catherine, whispers of annulment circulating like poison in the wine. In private moments, gazing from her chambers at the river's flow, Margaret's mind wrestled with unease. Can I shield Mary from her father's caprice, or will my bloodline drag us all into the abyss? Emotions rose, a poignant mix of devotion to the princess, whom she loved as her own, and a critical foreboding that loyalty might not suffice in a realm where queens fell. An obscure, unsettling detail emerges from the court's shadowed corners. During a 1520 diplomatic summit at the Field of the Cloth of Gold, Margaret attended as part of the English entourage, but in a private tent. She overheard French envoys jesting about her Yorkist ghosts, alluding to rumored secret correspondences with exiled Plantagenet claimants, fabrications that planted seeds of doubt in Henry's spies, their words like invisible thorns pricking at her security. This eavesdropped mockery haunted her, thoughts turning defensive. Do they not see my service, or do shadows of the past blind them to my present fealty? Sympathy swells for her isolation amid the pomp, critically highlighting how baseless rumors could erode even the sturdiest foundations, turning favor into fragility. As Henry's restlessness intensified, his eye wandering to Anne Boleyn by 1527, the great matter of his divorce looming. Margaret navigated with grace, supporting Catherine and Mary while avoiding overt defiance. Her estates at Warblington Castle provided refuge, but couriers brought tidings of courtly shifts, alliances withering as old friends like Thomas More voiced dissent. The king's mind, a tempest of ambition and insecurity, began to view Margaret's noble lineage not as an asset but a threat, her proximity to Mary a potential rallying point for Catholic opposition. Emotions churned within her, a deep sympathy for the Queen's plight mirroring her own widowed struggles, yet a critical resolve to endure, whispering prayers in chapels where candles flickered like fleeting hopes. The storm brewed subtly. Excommunications from Rome in 1533, the Act of Supremacy declaring Henry head of the Church, reshaping England in ways that tested every soul. Margaret's family felt the ripples, Reginald's tracts from Italy criticizing the divorce, Geoffrey's uneasy loyalties hinting at fractures to come. In the glittering yet treacherous dance of court, where favors masked foreshadows of fall, Margaret held her ground, unaware how deeply the king's suspicions rooted. Did unwavering loyalty truly invite suspicion, or was Henry's restless mind the crueler force, brewing storms from whispers alone? As twilight fell over Greenwich, casting elongated silhouettes across the palace grounds, the alliances bloomed and withered, drawing Margaret deeper into the gathering darkness. In the shadowed cloisters of Sion Abbey, where nuns chanted vespers amid the scent of beeswax candles and damp stone, the year 1538 brought a chill wind of accusation that swept through Margaret Pole's world. As Henry VIII's agents descended upon her estates, seizing papers and servants in a raid that signaled the tightening net of treason around the Countess and her kin. Once a favored governess to Princess Mary, Margaret now found herself ensnared in the pilgrimage of Grace's aftermath. A well-known historical uprising of 1536, where Northern Catholics rebelled against the dissolution of monasteries, their defeat leading to widespread executions that stained the snows of York with dread. Remember the overheard whispers at the Field of the Cloth of Gold, those unsettling jests about her Yorkist ghosts. They now materialized as indictments, fabricated plots weaving through royal paranoia, unraveling her carefully tended life, and drawing her inexorably toward the Tower of London's grim embrace, where stone walls whispered of forgotten prisoners. The accusations began subtly, like threads pulled from a loom. Geoffrey Pole, Margaret's youngest son, arrested in August 1538 on suspicions of conspiring with Reginald, whose papal cardinalship and vocal criticisms of Henry's divorce from Italy fueled the king's wrath. Geoffrey, under duress in the Tower's interrogation chambers, confessed to imagined treasons, letters hidden in ciphers, meetings in moonlit gardens, his mind fracturing under the weight of threats, thoughts racing in terror. Must I betray my own blood to save my skin, or hold fast and doom us all? Emotions surged within him, a sympathetic torrent of fear for his family, critically amplified by the knowledge that his words, coerced or not, would ensnare his mother in the web. Sympathy swells for Geoffrey, a man caught in the vice of loyalty and survival, while criticism falls on Henry's regime, where paranoia birthed monsters from mere dissent. Margaret's world unraveled swiftly. Her home at Warblington Castle was ransacked, servants questioned until dawn, their loyalties twisted into testimonies of disloyalty. The king's spies uncovered evidence, a banner embroidered with the 5 wounds of Christ, symbol of the pilgrimage rebels, hidden in her attics, a fabrication planted or misinterpreted to paint her as a traitor, harboring Catholic sympathies against the new Church of England. In her chambers, as guards rifled through her possessions, Margaret's thoughts turned defiant yet despairing. Have I not served faithfully, or does my Plantagenet name forever mark me as foe? The air grew thick with dread. her emotions a poignant blend of indignation and maternal anguish for her children, now scattered like leaves in a gale. Henry arrested, Ursula fleeing whispers of guilt. An obscure, unsettling detail clings to this tightening net. Among the seized items was a locket containing a lock of hair from her executed brother Edward, engraved with a Latin inscription praying for the souls of the damned, which interrogators twisted into proof of necromantic rituals invoking Yorkist spirits against the Tudor crown, a perversion of her private grief that chilled even the hardened Cromwell's agents. This talisman, echoing the golden barrel bracelet of her youth, became a noose in their reports, Margaret's mind reeling at the violation. How dare they profane my sorrows, turning memory into malice? Sympathy deepens for her violation, critically underscoring the era's hysteria, where personal relics fueled public persecutions. Royal paranoia escalated as Henry, beset by failed pregnancies with Jane Seymour and fears of invasion, saw enemies in every shadow. Reginald's The Defense of the Unity of the Church, tracked, branding him a heretic in exile, his family's English ties a conduit for plots. Cromwell, the king's chief minister, orchestrated the indictments, bills of attainder passed without trial in Parliament, condemning Margaret for aiding her son's alleged treasons. Her arrest in November 1538 came at dawn, soldiers bursting into Bisham Manor, dragging her to Cowdray House for initial confinement, then southward to the Tower. The journey blurred in her thoughts, a haze of rattling chains and hostile stares, emotions raw with betrayal. I raised his daughter as my own. Is this the reward for devotion? The web tightened relentlessly. Executions of associates like Sir Edward Neville, beheaded for imagined complicity, their fates forewarnings that echoed through the Tower's gates. Margaret's family splintered, Geoffrey pardoned but broken, Henry imprisoned, leaving her to ponder the unraveling in isolation. Paranoia reigned supreme, Henry's mind a fortress of suspicion, viewing her as a symbol of old nobility, threatening his reformed realm. Did fabricated plots truly merit such unraveling, or was royal paranoia the crueler weaver, ensnaring innocents in threads of fear? As fog rolled off the Thames, enveloping the Tower in its grim embrace, Margaret's world contracted to stone and silence, the net drawn tight, promising only deeper shadows. In the foreboding depths of the Tower of London, where the ravens croaked prophecies from ancient battlements and the Thames lapped mournfully against moss-covered walls, Margaret Pole languished in captivity. From November 1539 onward, her once noble frame confined to a sparse cell in the Beauchamp Tower, its stone floors etched with the desperate graffiti of previous inmates. Stripped of her titles by an act of attainder passed in Parliament without trial, a well-known historical maneuver that condemned her for treason in May 1539, allowing Henry VIII to seize her vast estates and bypass judicial proceedings. Margaret's world shrank to echoes of dripping water and the distant clang of iron gates, her isolation a cruel echo of the royal paranoia that had ensnared her. Remember the fabricated banner with Christ's wounds from her castle raid, that twisted proof of rebellion? It now haunted her thoughts like a specter, amplifying the hardship of imprisonment where her unbroken spirit clashed against the looming unjust fate, decreed by a tyrant's whim that viewed her as a relic of threats long past. The Tower's cold stone embraced her like an unwelcome lover, the chill seeping through threadbare blankets, provided scantily by indifferent wardens, her days a monotonous cycle of prayer and pacing within four walls that seemed to close in with each passing hour. At 66 years old, Margaret's body bore the burdens of age, aching joints from the damp, a cough that rattled in the fog-shrouded mornings. Yet her mind remained a fortress of resilience, thoughts turning to her scattered family. Geoffrey, pardoned but shattered. Henry, imprisoned nearby in the same grim fortress. Reginald, safe in exile but branded a traitor. Emotions welled within her, a deep sympathy evoking longing for the warmth of Bisham Manor, critically intertwined with indignation at the injustice. Have I not bled loyalty for this crown, only to be repaid with chains? The air grew thick with dread, as rumors filtered through guards' gossip of Cromwell's fall in 1540, executed for his own alleged treasons, a ironic twist that offered no reprieve but underscored the king's capricious mercy. An obscure, unsettling detail pervades her captivity. In letters smuggled to supporters, Margaret described visions of her executed father and brother appearing in dreams, their forms translucent against the cell's gloom, whispering encouragements that blurred the line between divine solace and descending madness, a private torment that jailers misinterpreted as seditious mutterings when overheard. These apparitions, echoing the locket of Edward's hair seized earlier, fueled her inner monologues. Are they guardians or omens? Guiding me through this veil, emotions stirring a poignant blend of comfort and despair, sympathy for her fractured psyche while critically highlighting how isolation amplified the mind's shadows, turning grief into ghostly companions. Years dragged on in this cruel anticipation. Henry VIII's court moved forward, marrying Anne of Cleves in 1540, annulling it swiftly, then wedding Catherine Howard, while Margaret endured privations, her allowance meager, forcing her to pawn jewels for bread and firewood. Princess Mary, once her charge, sent secret messages of support, their bond a thread of light in the darkness, yet the king's agents intercepted many, twisting them into further evidence of conspiracy. In solitary reflections by the arrow-slit window, overlooking the green where so many had met their ends, Margaret pondered the looming specter. Will death come swiftly, or linger like this endless wait? Her spirit, unbroken, manifested in quiet defiances, refusing to confess to crimes uncommitted during rare interrogations, her voice steady despite the tremor in her hands. Hardship etched deeper lines on her face, the tower's regimen of sparse meals and enforced silence wearing at her resolve. Yet she clung to faith, reciting psalms that echoed faintly off the stones. Guards, some pitying the elderly Countess, others hardened by duty, brought tales of the outside world, rebellions quelled, alliances forged, that only heightened the anticipation of her fate. Henry's whim, ever volatile, delayed her trial, perhaps savoring the control or distracted by his own ailments. The tyrant's health waning as gout and ulcers plagued him, sympathy surges for Margaret, a woman of dignity reduced to begging for warmth, critically condemning the system that imprisoned the innocent on whispers alone. The echoes of captivity resonated with past injustices, the Malmsey wine, the beheaded brother, forging her anticipation into a steel of endurance. As seasons turned, from the bloom of false springs to winters that froze the river solid, the unjust fate hovered like a blade suspended, its descent inevitable yet deferred, drawing her deeper into the tower's unrelenting grasp. Did years of isolation truly break spirits like hers, or was the tyrant's whim the crueler torment, prolonging suffering in the name of forgotten fears? As moonlight filtered through the bars, casting pallid patterns on the floor, Margaret waited, her echoes of hardship a testament to resilience amid the encroaching shadows. On the mist-shrouded dawn of May 27, 1541, Tower Green awoke to the somber toll of bells from the chapel of St. Peter at Vincula, where the scaffold stood like a grim sentinel amid the fortress's ancient walls, and Margaret Pole, the aged Countess of Salisbury, was led forth to meet her end in one of history's most disturbingly botched executions. At 67, frail from 2 years of imprisonment, yet unbowed in spirit, she ascended the steps with a dignity that belied the horror awaiting her, her white hair unbound, and her simple gown a stark contrast to the opulent robes of her courtly past. This well-known historical execution, ordered by Henry VIII without trial, amid fears of northern rebellion and her son Reginald's continued defiance from abroad, served as a stark warning to Catholic sympathizers, her death a calculated strike to extinguish the last embers of Plantagenet resistance in a realm fractured by religious schism. Remember the ghostly visions of her father and brother in her cell, those apparitions blurring solace and madness. They now seemed prophetic, as the botched blade descended in a frenzy of ineptitude, etching her defiant end into the annals of injustice, a tale of horror that lingers like fog over the Thames. The crowd gathered sparsely, guards, a few officials, no throngs of spectators as in grander spectacles, their breaths visible in the chill air, eyes fixed on the scaffold where the executioner, rumored to be a novice thrust into duty for lack of a seasoned hand, awaited with an axe that gleamed dully under the gray sky. Margaret's mind, sharp despite her frailty, raced with a torrent of memories. The cradle at Farley, her brother's severed fate, the glittering favors turned to chains. Thoughts surged defiantly. Shall I kneel to this farce, or stand as the last true Plantagenet? Emotions a whirlwind of righteous fury and poignant resignation, sympathy swelling for the woman who had nurtured a princess only to be discarded like a wilted rose. Critically, one condemns Henry's tyranny, a king whose whims devoured the loyal, turning justice into jest. She refused the blindfold, her voice steady as she proclaimed her innocence before God and man, denying any treason and praying for the king's soul in a final act of grace that stung like accusation. The executioner, trembling perhaps from inexperience or the weight of her nobility, swung the axe clumsily, the first blow glancing off her shoulder in a mishap that drew gasps from the onlookers, the air growing thick with dread as chaos unfolded on the platform. Margaret, in agony yet unbroken, rose partially, her thoughts a blaze of determination. I will not yield easily to this butcher's folly. Let history witness my endurance. The botched strikes continued, 11 in total, as chroniclers would later whisper, a horrifying dance of incompetence that prolonged her suffering, her defiant spirit shining through the ordeal like a candle in the storm. An obscure, unsettling detail shrouds this descent. Amid the frenzy, Margaret's hand instinctively clutched at the golden barrel bracelet she had worn since youth, now returned to her in a mocking gesture of mercy by her jailers, its tiny emblem slipping in the struggle and rolling across the scaffold planks, lost forever in the crevices below, symbolizing the final erasure of her family's shadowed legacy. This talisman, echoing the Malmsey wine and Yorkist ghosts of her past, amplified the horror, her mind flickering with irony even in extremis. Does this barrel mark my end as it did father's, a cycle of royal cruelty unbroken? Emotions raw, a deep sympathy for her unyielding poise amid inept terror, critically underscoring the barbarity of an execution that mocked the very notion of merciful justice. As the final blow fell, silence descended over Tower Green, the ravens taking flight as if fleeing the injustice. Her body laid to rest in the chapel alongside Anne Boleyn and others felled by Henry's blade. News spread swiftly to court, where Henry, bloated and ailing in his chambers, received it with grim satisfaction, his paranoia assuaged for a moment, though whispers of divine retribution stirred among the fearful. Reginald, in Rome, learned of it months later, his grief fueling further tracks against the tyrant. The horror of her end etched deep into history's darkest executions, a testament to defiance that outlasted the axe, injustice personified in a sovereign's caprice. Did such a botched fate truly befit a woman of unwavering loyalty, or was history the crueler executioner, prolonging her legend in shadows of sympathy and scorn? As the sun pierced the mist, casting faint light on the stained scaffold, Margaret's tale concluded in defiant silence, her blood a final whisper against the winds of Tudor tyranny. As the echoes of the botched blade fade into the gentle hush of evening, dear listener, allow the weight of Margaret's story to settle softly, like dew on morning grass, reminding us that even in history's darkest corners, resilience blooms eternal. Her life, threaded with noble blood and unjust chains, evokes a profound compassion for the orphaned girl, the devoted governess, the imprisoned countess whose spirit defied the axe. In her defiance, we find not just horror, but a quiet strength that outshines the tyrant's shadow, urging us to cherish loyalty in our own fragile worlds. Henry's England moved onward, his later years marked by fleeting marriages and fading health, while the Tower's stones absorbed her tale into countless others, a mosaic of endurance against power's caprice. Let the intensity dim now, the sensational dread dissolving into reflective peace, as we honor her memory not with fear, but with empathy for the human heart's unyielding beat. History's lessons, though chilling, guide us toward kinder paths where justice prevails over paranoia. Breathe easy, wanderer. Release the scaffold's grip and embrace the serenity that follows every storm. May your dreams weave lighter threads, unburdened by the past's heavy loom. Good night, and let tranquility enfold you.